I go on this world geography app, and it's basically a quiz that takes you through all of these different categories of geography questions. So you've got to identify the flag, identify the border outline, capitals, population, percentage, religion, things like that. So you start to learn about all these different countries in the world, and it's actually helped me quite a lot at work, because I can say, okay, there's something going on in this country. Here's the capital. I know roughly what the population is. I know something about the culture.
You'll have to send me that. That sounds very useful.
It's free as well. I mean, it's got a thing where you've got hearts, and if you get too many wrong, you have to wait for a cooldown to get more, but you can buy more with real money. But I've never had to do that because I'm a bit of a know-it-all. But pair that with something like GeoGuesser, where if you're not familiar, it basically plants you somewhere on Google Maps in the world, and you're meant to deduce where you are. And I quite like doing it so I can't move around as well. So wherever it puts me, I'm stuck. I have to figure out based on contextual cues where I am. But in so doing, I've learned bits and pieces of lots of foreign languages. Like I know how to tell lots of languages apart. I can tell places like Africa by the colour of their soil and their plants. I can tell different Indonesian countries apart from the type of palms they have. There's all sorts of weird things that you can learn just not deliberately. Like I've not went out of my way and studied them, because that'd be very strange, but people do that. But you just get a sort of vibe of something through experiencing it and doing it quite a lot. And then you're like, oh yeah, those look like Argentinian ferns to me. And then
I'm getting an Argentinian vibe from this flora.
But that's kind of how it is. You, through the experience of it, you learn from what you've done, from trial and error, and you actually find that, wow, this is quite applicable. So I've seen before where I can't remember where it was, but somewhere online said, anyone have any idea where this was? And I was just like, hang on a minute, I've never been there, but that kind of looks like Tenerife to me. And then someone in the comments was just like, oh, it's here in Tenerife. And I was just like, oh, yes. So GeoGuesser does work. Not sure how useful it is, because unless you're getting kidnapped and placed in random places by some sort of evil genius, just like, yes, you've got to decipher where you are.
Well, I'm going to be honest, Josh. In that circumstance, you would be the evil genius planting people.
That does sound like something I would do. Take my GeoGuesser experience to the next level and make people in real life do it.
Should have paid more attention in geography.
So where was I? Okay,
back to
attention. Yes. So apparently several studies, according to the main meta-analysis I've been referring to, found that playing video games can improve various aspects of attention, including selective attention, divided attention, attention switching, and sustained attention. So it seems like pretty much all of the aspects I could think of. And many of these studies have found that people who play video games have much better selective attention and processing speed compared to non-gamers. So to say that, oh, that's going to rot your brain, oh, you're not going to be able to pay attention to anything, actually, through in focusing on it, you're refining your attentional abilities in a way that might not happen elsewhere. I mean, especially if you've got, say, a day job where you have to pay attention, and then you go home and you play video games, well, you're going to get very good at paying attention to stuff. And I think that this is probably something that I have gone through, because I feel like I've got the ability to keep my attention focused on something which I didn't have previously, which is very, very useful, and it is actually proven very helpful. So also, some studies have found that video game players were better able to identify distractions and more quickly return to what they're doing as well, in that you're dealing with lots of information. And so particularly FPS players, first-person shooters, it's action game, quite often high stakes, you die very quickly. And so you've got to pay attention to what you're doing. You know what information is relevant, which isn't, but this is a valuable cognitive skill. This is something that our brains have got quite good at, but not exactly perfect. And therefore, there is room there for you to get a lot better at it than you could do. So apparently puzzle and role-playing games have less of an effect, and actually action games are really good for these cognitive abilities. Some other studies have found that there have been no difference between gamers and non-gamers, but I think the majority have sided with there is a noticeable and tangible difference. I've even seen some that have suggested that violent video games have a detrimental effect on people's attention, but I think that that's just junk science, pretty much. I've looked into it, and the understanding, the comprehension from the researchers seems to indicate that there's been some money exchanging hands, not to make any accusations.
Oh, really? Oh, dear.
But
now we're getting just conspiratorial. Now you've caught my attention again.
But it just makes me think that someone's paying them to make them look bad, basically, in that they're talking about them like they have no knowledge, certainly not enough to study them in depth as academics, and it was really
given
poorly
that
written.
The studies that you've referenced cite action games as being able to help increase people's attention and
over others,
over others, and those are going to be, just by virtue of being action games, overwhelmingly more violent than many other types of games. The research seems to contradict itself.
Yes. Well, that's true of a lot of research in psychology, unfortunately, because it's still quite a young science, and human beings are very complicated. The human brain is the most complicated thing in the known universe, so perhaps what is true of some people is not true of others, or vice versa. But one thing it does seem to do is it helps children with attention deficit disorder. And particularly, I saw this study titled Video Games for the Assessment and Treatment of Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder, a Systematic Review. And it talks about games that are specially designed rather than the commercially available ones. But it may well be that actually the commercially available ones might actually be better than the ones they've specifically designed, as is the case with some of the previous factors we've discussed. And this is focusing on the gamification of things, particularly learning skills, that is so effective because, of course, we are still animals, and the way that pretty much all animals except human beings learn is through positive or negative reinforcement and association. So that's classical and operant conditioning. If you're up on your psychology, so
I don't know what it means.
So basically, Pavlov's dogs, the thing where he rang a bell when it was dinner time, and then they started salivating. But he realised that if they rang the bell without the food, they still salivated because of the association.
You can train people like that.
Yes, exactly. And that's kind of what's going on with video games. You're doing things repeatedly over and over again, training yourself to be proficient at certain things.
I think there's a joke about it in The Office. Have you ever watched the US Office?
No, I've only seen the UK one.
Fair play. Well, there's just an opening joke in it where Jim, who always constantly pranks/bullies the guy he shares a desk with, oh my goodness, I forgot, Dwight. He basically conditions him that every time he hears a ringtone that he expects to get a sweet at the same time, until, over the course of a few days he trains him until the point where he just stops doing it, and the ringtone goes off and he goes, "What are you doing?" "Oh, I don't know, actually." And then he's like, why did I do that? I didn't realize that was Pavlov's dog, just as a joke.
It can be done. My favorite is having like a little spray water bottle. Just every time someone does something you don't like, spray them, and eventually they'll learn.
Thank goodness he's not started doing that around the office.
Don't give me ideas. Don't make me get the electrodes out either. Then it becomes really efficient.
Bloody electrodes! I
can have a little button with names on it, and I can just press them.
Fantastic.
To watch the full video, please become a premium member at lotuseaters.com.